I suddenly found myself transported 6 years into the past. It was my childhood friend's 19th birthday party. Someone egged me on to confess my feelings to the poorest, most reclusive student at our school. My childhood friend curled his lips into a smirk and joined in. Just go. What are you waiting for? Ivy, don't tell me you're secretly in love with me and can't bear to confess to someone else. Someone shoved me in front of the poor student. He slowly raised his eyes. His face was pale, and his gaze was as dark and lifeless as stagnant water. Before my brain could catch up, I instinctively wrapped my hand around his icy fingers and blurted out, "Hubby, why aren't you at home looking after the kids? What are you doing here?" Chapter 01. Before I was transported back in time, I had kissed my husband and children goodbye. Then I went out to drink with a heartbroken friend until we were both completely wasted. But when I lifted my head again through the drunken haze, everything around me had changed. The room grew increasingly noisy, and someone leaned close to my ear. "Ivy, you lost the dare. Go tell Bernard you like him. Don't chicken out now. Ha ha ha. Isn't he the famously broke weirdo from our department? Making Ivy confess to him will be hilarious." I looked around in confusion. The private room was dimly lit. Drinks flowed freely, and the crowd around me looked both strange and painfully familiar. Kevin, my childhood friend whom I had not seen in years, sat in the seat of honor, casually swirling a wine glass in one hand as he watched me with an amused expression. "Just go. What are you waiting for? Ivy, don't tell me you're secretly in love with me and can't bear to confess to someone else." His words sent the entire room into laughter. "That won't do." Lola giggled as she leaned against Kevin's shoulder and teased, "Any girl who wants to date you has to get through me first. Otherwise, she might lead you astray." My face went blank as my brain struggled to process everything. Just as I was about to speak, the door opened, and a tall, straight-backed waiter walked in. Someone immediately gave the others a knowing look. "Bernard's here." "Ivy, what are you waiting for?" Someone shoved me in front of the poor student. He slowly raised his eyes. His face was pale, and his gaze was as dark and lifeless as stagnant water. Before my brain could catch up, I found myself staring at the face of the man I had shared a bed with for years. I instinctively wrapped my hand around his icy fingers and blurted out, "Hubby, why aren't you at home looking after the kids? What are you doing here?" Chapter 02. The room fell silent for a moment. The boy's lifeless eyes suddenly widened, and he remained speechless for a long while. Then I remembered that he was deaf in his right ear. I rose onto my tiptoes, leaned close to his other ear, and asked, "Where's our daughter? And why are you here playing dress up?" His face turned completely red. He gently pushed me away. "You should show some restraint. We had been married for years." Why was he still blushing like a bashful teenager? I looked left and right. Where was my beautiful, doll-like daughter? A mocking laugh cut through the silence. "Ha ha ha. Ivy is really committed to the act." It was Lola. She covered her mouth as she smiled at me. The others gradually recovered from their initial shock, their expressions changing to ones of sudden understanding. Someone even gave me an approving thumbs up. "That's our Ivy. She really knows how to commit to a dare." The mood lighting in the private room was switched off, and the room became as bright as day. I blinked in disbelief. These people were actually the spoiled rich kids I used to hang out with. Their faces were still youthful, and they all looked only 19 or 20. A gigantic birthday cake sat in the middle of the room. Written across it were the words, "Happy 19th birthday, young Master Kevin." It finally dawned on me. I had traveled back in time, and I had landed at Kevin's birthday party. I stiffly turned my head and saw Kevin leaning back in his seat, his expression dark as he studied me closely. "Ivy, wasn't that a little excessive? You even called him your husband? Do you two know each other that well?" At this point in time, Bernard and I had never interacted. We were practically strangers. I was glamorous and wealthy, the very image of a pampered rich girl. Meanwhile, he was still working here, struggling to support himself. Bernard had clearly heard everything. He lowered his eyes and silently finished serving the drinks. It seemed as though he had already grown accustomed to this kind of treatment. The last time Kevin and the others had egged me on like this, Bernard had said nothing and quietly endured it. Meanwhile, I had felt so humiliated that I had fought back tears and fled the room. They had mocked me over it for a long time afterward. But things were different now. This time, I remained where I was. The only thought running through my mind was how adorably inexperienced my husband looked as a teenager. I wanted to look at him a little longer. Then I hurried after him. Behind me, Kevin called my name in a voice filled with suppressed anger. Ivy! Chapter 03. When I found Bernard. He was standing with his back slightly hunched while the manager on duty berated him. How could you possibly offend those wealthy young masters and ladies? I only gave you this job because I pitied you. And you call yourself a college student? What a joke! Every complaint costs you $500. I felt both furious and heartbroken. I had no idea how many cold looks and insults Bernard had endured over the years. Hey, mister, I'm withdrawing my complaint. And I'll cover the money. Stop scolding him. The manager glanced at my expensive clothes. His expression immediately changed into a sycophantic smile. Miss Ivy, the problem is that the complaint came from young Master Kevin's private room. So, only then did I remember that this club belonged to Kevin's family. Suppressing the discomfort rising inside me, I reached for Bernard's hand. Then you're quitting. Let's go. I pulled him forward a couple of steps. He did not move. Standing 6 feet tall, Bernard lowered his eyes and looked at me with a complicated expression. His lips pressed tightly together. After thinking for a moment, I leaned close to his left ear again. I said, I'm taking you away. This place is no good. He instinctively turned his head. The rim of his ear brushed against my lips. It was surprisingly soft. And he paused for a moment. Miss Ivy. Bernard parted his lips. His voice low and hoarse. His long, raven black eyelashes concealed the emotions in his eyes. I don't want to take part in your game. I just need a job. I froze slightly. Right. He did not know me yet, so he thought I was only teasing him as part of the dare. Growing anxious, I immediately raised 4 fingers and swore. Hubby, I'm serious. You have to believe me. He looked deeply embarrassed. Could you please stop calling me that? Of course. Hubby, I understand. Hubby, I replied. He turned and stared at me. We looked at each other in silence. I was still leaning against his shoulder. From this distance, I could even see the fine hairs on his porcelain pale cheeks. You're standing too close when you speak. But aren't you? I pointed at his ears, and my eyes suddenly lit up. You can hear with both ears? He did not understand why I was asking, but he still gave a quiet nod. Yes. Yes. I suddenly felt that traveling back in time had been incredibly worthwhile. I'll support you from now on. Quit this job, pack your things, and move into my house as soon as possible. Chapter 04. Bernard refused, so I settled for the next best thing and asked for his contact information. That night, I lay stiffly on my bed with my phone pressed against my chest. My thoughts inevitably drifted into the past. I married Bernard the year I graduated from college. At the time, my family was on the verge of bankruptcy. He proposed a marriage alliance with my family and stepped in just in time to save us. Back then, he had only recently been acknowledged as the long-lost son of the Chan family, the wealthiest family in the country. He was at the height of his success, and countless social climbers were eager to curry favor with him. No one could have imagined that he would choose the family, which was already teetering on the brink of collapse. My entire world used to revolve around Kevin, so I rarely paid attention to anyone else. It was only after meeting Bernard again that I belatedly realized who he was. He was the reclusive poor student everyone used to talk about. By then, he had already lost the hearing in his right ear. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he was no longer the powerless young man he had once been. Yet whenever he looked at me, he would still instinctively lower his gaze. There was always an inexplicable trace of insecurity about him. Much later, while our daughter slept soundly beside us, he buried his face in the crook of my neck and quietly brought up the past. Then he suddenly asked, "Does someone know when another person secretly loves them?" They probably do. Isn't there a saying online? How could someone standing beside a bonfire not feel its warmth? He lightly bit my skin, his voice sounding slightly dejected. Then I suppose my fire just wasn't burning brightly enough. That was when I learned that he had been secretly in love with me throughout our entire time at university. I had simply been too oblivious to notice. I buried myself beneath the covers and rolled around. At last, my phone chimed with a new message. I poked my head out to check it. Why was it Kevin? My mood instantly plummeted, and I frowned in irritation. The screen was filled with his questions. What was that about today? Are you angry? Seriously, Ivy? Can't you take a joke? Or are you still holding a grudge over what happened last month? Several years had passed. It took me a great deal of effort to remember what he was referring to. Kevin and I had grown up together. When we were children, I would run after him, and he would always protect me. During holidays, our parents would often visit each other's homes for meals. Kevin and I had always gotten along well. We had attended the same schools from childhood through high school. We had even applied to the same university. But once we entered college, Kevin finally went through a long overdue rebellious phase. He grew tired of my obedient, goody-two-shoes personality and began admiring bold, uninhibited girls like Lola instead. He would sling an arm around her shoulders, and the two of them called each other bro. They became even closer than Kevin and I were, despite the fact that I had known him since childhood. Otherwise, why would he have abandoned me during our hiking trip last month? The hike had originally been something Kevin and I had planned together. Then Lola invited herself along, turning it into an outing for three. The moment we reached the foot of the mountain, the two of them began racing to see who could reach the summit first. They were both fiercely competitive and quickly left me far behind, chasing each other up the trail. But Lola pushed herself too hard and twisted her ankle. Kevin carried her down the mountain using another path. I knew nothing about it and struggled all the way to the summit alone. I waited for them for a long time, but neither of them appeared. The joy I had felt upon reaching the top gradually faded away. They did not reply to my messages or answer my calls. As darkness began to fall, I had no choice but to make my way down the mountain alone. Trembling with fear, my legs suddenly gave out, and I fell, injuring my calf. I forced myself to take a cab to the hospital. That was where I ran into Kevin. He was holding Lola by the elbow and lowering his head as he reminded her of something. When he looked up and saw me, he froze. What are you doing here? I had struggled to register by myself and was standing there awkwardly with one leg bent. I lowered my head and refused to answer. He asked again. You're hurt. Why didn't you tell me? I could not stop myself from replying. You didn't answer. His phone was inside Lola's bag. When he heard that, his voice became slightly awkward. Oh, I put it on silent and didn't notice. Sorry. The anger that had been building inside me only grew stronger. My grievances spilled out along with my tears. What good is saying sorry? Couldn't you have at least told me what happened before you left? Do you have any idea how long I waited for you up there? Seeing that I was still confronting him and refusing to let the matter go, impatience appeared in his expression. He interrupted me. You managed to get to the hospital by yourself, didn't you? Why are you making such a fuss? Lola twisted her ankle, and she also happened to be on her period. She needed someone to take care of her more than you did. Can you stop arguing? Ivy, I'm not in the mood to fight with you today. No one told you to keep clinging to me. In the end, you brought this on yourself. Chapter 05. I rubbed the goosebumps on my arms. Then I ignored him. The screen went dark, only to light up again. This time, it was a notification saying Bernard had accepted my friend request. I typed, Hubby, where will you be tomorrow? I'll come find you. Bernard did not respond for a while. Then he wrote, why do you keep calling me that? I replied, you mean Hubby? You don't like it? But don't you like me? Having his secret exposed so abruptly, he went silent. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared repeatedly, and it took him 5 whole minutes to respond. In the end, all he sent was a string of non-committal ellipses that left him plenty of room to retreat. I typed with a solemn expression. The truth is, I traveled here from the future. 4 years from now, you'll ask me to marry you. We'll live happily together and have an adorable daughter. It sounded rather far-fetched. So to make myself more convincing, I deliberately added, you have a long scar across your lower back, right? He replied instantly, no. Huh? I froze for a moment before quickly figuring it out. It must have been the same as his right ear. At this point in time, the accident had not happened yet. There was still a chance to prevent it. My mood immediately improved, afraid he would think I was simply making everything up. I hurriedly called him. Listen to me. His even, Restrained breathing came through the phone. His voice was very soft. Okay, I'm listening. I'm not lying. You have a mole on your left buttock and another one above the right side of your waist. And you have 2 shallow dimples on your lower back. Also, the length of what you have down there is. Ivy. He interrupted. Even through the phone, I could hear his breathing turn rapid and uneven. I could practically picture his face burning red with embarrassment. Then he slowly asked, "Are you serious about what you said?" "Of course. How else do you think we had our daughter?" "That isn't what I meant." He seemed to take a deep breath. "Did you really come from the future?" "Yeah." Silence lingered for a moment. Then he asked, "Is this some new kind of prank? If this is what you like, then I can try to go along with it." He still did not believe me. After hanging up, I leaned back onto the bed with a worried expression. He was sensitive and insecure, so of course he would not believe something like this so easily. It looked like I would have to make him feel safer around me. Chapter 06. Kevin stared fixedly at the chat screen. Ivy still had not replied. He pressed his lips into a tight line, his irritation becoming increasingly obvious. Lola sat beside him smoking. She glanced over casually and laughed. "The little princess is angry. She's doing it on purpose, pretending to pull away so you'll chase after her, playing hard to get. It's always the same routine." She spoke with complete confidence. "I guarantee she likes you. Think about it. If you get together with that goody two-shoes, she'll have even more of an excuse to control you whenever you come out with us. So you need to keep the upper hand and train that temper out of her. Once you have her wrapped around your finger, she won't dare get angry with you no matter how much you mess around." Kevin tossed his phone aside and irritably pulled out a cigarette. Lola leaned closer and lit it for him. They were standing extremely close together. He sneered. "Even if she likes me, that doesn't mean I'll accept her. She's been following me around for more than 10 years. I got tired of her ages ago." Lola narrowed her eyes and smiled like a fox, concealing a flicker of delight. "When the day really comes, will you actually have the heart to reject her?" He fell silent. Smoke drifted around him as his expression gradually darkened. Only after a long while did he give a quiet snort. "That depends on how well she behaves." Chapter 07. I was going to confess my feelings to him, but no matter how many times I asked Bernard out, he refused to meet me. Even when I transferred money to him, he would not accept it. That stubborn pride of my daughter's father. Left with no other choice, I went to the club where he worked and secretly booked the most luxurious private room before his shift began. The package included venue decorations. The manager approached me with an ingratiating smile and asked how I wanted the room decorated. I looked around and nodded solemnly. "Set it up for a romantic confession. I'm confessing to someone I like today. Got it?" The occasion had to feel special. The manager bent over his little notebook and carefully wrote everything down. "What kind of flowers does he like?" That stumped me. As far as I could remember, Bernard had always adjusted his preferences to match mine. Whatever I liked, he liked too. I thought for a moment. Let's go with gardenias. I had loved their fresh, delicate fragrance ever since I was a child. After we got married, Bernard even planted an entire garden of them and tended to them himself. Every morning, he would pick a few blossoms and place them beside my bed. They looked beautiful and smelled wonderful. Of course! The manager eagerly scurried away. In a corner where I could not see him, he released the voice message button and sent the recording. "Young master, Ivy said she's confessing her feelings to you today. She's in VIP room 666. She even chose flowers that match the perfume you always wear." "Understood. I'll wait for you here." I glanced around, then suddenly took a few steps backward. "Oh, right. Ahem. Bernard should be starting his shift soon. Shouldn't he? I want him to serve this room. No other waiter is allowed inside." "Certainly. Miss Ivy." Chapter 08. The room had been decorated in an elegant champagne tone style. Warm amber lighting filled the space, while a trail of flower petals stretched from the doorway to the main seat. The delicate fragrance in the air made everything feel incredibly romantic. I was very pleased. Someone delivered a bouquet of gardenias nearly half my height. I tested its weight and had just lifted it into my arms when the door opened. A tall, slender shadow stretched across the floor to my feet. "You're here?" The cluster of pure white blossoms blocked my view. conveniently hiding my flushed, embarrassed face as well. Ahem. Now that the moment had finally arrived, I was starting to feel nervous. My words came out in a jumbled rush. These are for you. There were a few misunderstandings before, and I hope you won't hold them against me. But everything I told you was true. I like you. In the future, we'll get married, have a child, and live a happy life together. Please stop pushing me away. Try giving me a chance. Will you be with me? When I finished speaking, the room fell silent, breathing in the faint floral fragrance. I nervously waited for his answer. Bernard could not possibly reject me. Could he? He had admitted himself that he liked me. What answered me was a brief laugh. A moment later, someone took the bouquet from my arms. My view instantly cleared. The smile on my face froze. Lola was leaning against the wall nearby, wearing a knowing expression. What did I tell you? She was only pretending to pull away so he'd chase her. Look how eager she is to prove herself now. Kevin held my flowers in his arms. He looked down at them, then back at me, the corner of his mouth lifting. He seemed to be in an excellent mood. Ivy, you really put a lot of effort into this. All right, I forgive you. But if you sincerely want to be with me, then you need to listen to me, behave yourself, and stop trying to control everything I do. I stood there, completely petrified. A terrible feeling rose inside me. I quickly turned my head and saw Bernard standing not far away with a drink cart, silently watching us. I had no idea how long he had been there, but he had definitely witnessed everything that had just happened. Our eyes met. He lowered his gaze, his fingers tightening slightly around the cart handle. A faint, self-mocking smile appeared on his lips. Then he turned and walked away in the opposite direction. No. Bernard, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. I nearly burst into tears and instinctively ran after him. Wait for me. Kevin grabbed my arm, confusion mixed with restrained anger in his voice. If it isn't what it looks like, then what is it? Ivy, what are you trying to say? What I'm saying is, you two are out of your minds. They had ruined everything. Furious, I kicked Kevin hard in the shin. What are you even doing here uninvited? I prepared all of this for Bernard. Hiss. Kevin jerked his leg back. He finally seemed to realize what was happening, his face filling with disbelief. You like him? Lola also recovered from her surprise. She sighed theatrically, pretending to speak for my own good. I never expected you to be into someone like him, other than being handsome. What does Bernard even have going for him? Ivy, your taste is pretty questionable. Still better than yours. Lola always claimed she was simply blunt and straightforward. I had never liked her very much. I had once tried hard to convince myself that Kevin's friends should also be my friends. But no matter how I treated her, she always showed me a sharp, unmistakable hostility. She hid her insults behind the excuse of being honest, as though that gave her every right to humiliate me. And in the end, Kevin would still blame me for being petty. Just like now. Kevin gave a cold scoff. What exactly did Lola say that was wrong? I struggled to pull my arm free. Taking a deep breath, I snapped. Both of you, get out of my way. Chapter 09. I chased after Bernard, panting for breath. With his long legs, he strode ahead in silence, refusing to stop no matter how many times I called his name. Ow, that hurts. I pretended to fall and dropped to my knees. After waiting for a moment, I cautiously looked up. Sure enough, Bernard was crouching in front of me, his lips pressed into a tight line. He said nothing, simply gazing at me in silence. I looked up at him. In his eyes, I saw a storm of complicated emotions and unmistakable hurt. Where did you hurt yourself? He asked. I threw myself into his arms. My heart hurts. I felt his entire body stiffen. He froze like an ice sculpture, not daring to move. Let me explain. I was planning to surprise you today, since you didn't feel secure about my feelings. I wanted to confess to you properly and show you how sincere I am. I know you must have thought I was messing with you after what you saw, but I swear I wasn't. God knows where Kevin and the others suddenly came from. The more I spoke, the more aggrieved I felt. They ruined everything I spent all day preparing. I'm upset too. Could you hug me? He raised his hands and awkwardly placed them around my waist. I hugged him even tighter, rubbing my cheek against his chest. His heart was pounding fiercely, each beat heavier than the last. Why? His bitter voice sounded above my head. There's nothing good about me. Why would you like me? I pulled back from his embrace and looked at him seriously, brushing the hair away from his forehead. I revealed his handsome, pale face. You're wonderful. You're serious and attentive in everything you do. You're smart. You've won the top scholarship several times. And you're incredibly patient with animals. You've even fed those 2 campus cats until they're adorably fat. You have so many good qualities. How can you not see them? You like me. So why can't I like you too? If our feelings are mutual, then we should be together. In the past, my entire world had revolved around Kevin. I had grown accustomed to the pain of giving everything and receiving nothing in return. I thought that was simply how relationships worked. A little suffering and a few tears hardly seemed like the end of the world. So many people fell in love who had never endured some heartache for it. It was Bernard who later taught me that loving someone was like tending a flower. People who took pleasure in making women cry only loved themselves. They were bastards and the worst kind of partners. That was not how a precious relationship should be treated. What about you? I cupped his face in my hands and asked eagerly. When did you start liking me? His eyes widened, and his long eyelashes trembled. He was getting shy again. I lowered my head and seized the opportunity to kiss him on the lips. Bernard went completely still. My triumphant smile was reflected in his dark eyes. Pressing my advantage, I kissed him again and coaxed gently. It's not like we haven't kissed before. Can I do it one more time? Ivy! Kevin strode toward us from behind, his face twisted with rage. What the hell are you doing? Chapter 10. I had almost forgotten that we were in public. Pretending to be calm, I hurriedly got back to my feet. Bernard rose as well and quietly stepped in front of me, shielding me as he faced Kevin with a cool expression. I hid behind him. You saw everything. Why are you still asking? Are you insane? You actually fell for a penniless loser like him? Kevin suddenly calmed down. His dark eyes narrowed as he looked us over with almost cruel scrutiny. Or is this another elaborate stunt? Just like Lola said? Do I look like I'm joking? But don't you like me? Kevin and I spoke at the same time, like a chicken being strangled by the neck. I instantly fell silent. Only then did I awkwardly remember something. Not long ago, someone had discovered the diary where I had recorded my secret crush. I really had liked Kevin once. We had known each other for so long that his presence had filled nearly my entire adolescence. Besides, we used to be so close. How could I never have felt anything for him? In my memories, he was a boy in a neat white shirt, with a bright, clear smile. He ate meals with me, took walks with me, and was the first person to carry me to the school clinic whenever I had a fever. I was terrible at physics, so he sacrificed time he could have spent playing basketball to tutor me patiently. I recorded every moment that made my heart flutter in that diary. Kevin only needed one glance to know that I had been writing about him, but that had all happened a long time ago. Ever since he met Lola, the two of us had gradually drifted apart. I was the one who stubbornly tried to hold together a relationship that was already falling apart. I kept following behind him, hoping he would turn around and look at me, but things never went the way I hoped. My disappointments piled up until a dirt bike race organized by Lola finally killed every last feeling I had for him. For once, Kevin had invited me along. During the race, Lola overtook him and flipped him off. Kevin immediately abandoned me halfway through. He said he would come back for me after he won the race. But that day, torrential rain suddenly began to pour. It triggered a landslide, and I was swept away by the floodwaters. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital. I saw Kevin slap himself in guilt while rambling on about something. One of his legs was encased in a thick plaster cast. I stared at him blankly and asked, "Did you come back and save me?" He did not deny it. The nurse beside him said that the boy who had carried me to the hospital had been covered in blood and looked absolutely horrific. I closed my eyes. In the end, I still could not bring myself to blame him. But the entire incident had happened because of him, and whatever lingering attachment I had left disappeared completely. Returning to the present, I snapped in embarrassment. "Don't say things like that in front of my husband." Kevin was so furious that he nearly choked on his own breath. He exhaled sharply. pointed at Bernard, and redirected all his anger toward him. "You're fired. Get the hell out." "That's perfect." I wrapped both hands around Bernard's arm and looked up at him hopefully. "Now you can finally move into my house, right?" "Ivy, have you lost your mind? You're actually going to live with him? What kind of spell did he cast on you?" Chapter 11. The cool evening breeze greeted us as we stepped out of the club. Out of habit, I rose onto my tiptoes and whispered into his ear. "Why don't we live together?" He said nothing. He merely kept an arm firmly around my waist. I settled for the next best thing. "Then can I visit your place?" He turned his face away. "It's very shabby. I still want to go. It's not really suitable." "Hubby, I'm going." Unable to talk me out of it, he had no choice but to take me there. At the end of a narrow alley in an urban village stood a dimly lit, single-story house. It was tiny, but clean and fully equipped with everything he needed. The crimson hem of my dress was the only splash of color in the room. Bernard was extremely nervous. He changed the bedsheets before letting me sit down, then rinsed the cup several times before pouring me some water. Watching him behave as though he were facing a major crisis, I could not help laughing. Some water spilled from my cup. He crouched down to wipe it up for me. After taking off his jacket, his lean, well-defined arms were exposed. It would have been a shame not to act out a steamy tiny apartment romance scene in a setting like this. "You still haven't confirmed whether all the things I said about your body last time were correct. I'm worried I might have remembered something wrong." "Let me check again." Bernard's Adam's apple bobbed. He made no attempt to stop me. But before I could get anywhere, my mother's call came crashing in. "Are you dating someone?" I pouted and reluctantly pulled back my wandering fingers. Kevin must have gone running to her again. "You're an adult now, so I won't interfere too much, but I won't allow you to date some disreputable nobody. Tell me what's going on." Bernard heard the disapproval in my mother's voice and silently stood up. "It's a new era, Mom. People are free to choose whom they date. Stay out of it." I knew exactly what my mother was like, so I hung up before she could say another word. I did not mention Bernard Chan's true identity. As far as I knew, the Chan family had already found him by this point. He simply refused to return with them. Bernard had never told me much about the previous generation's wealthy family drama, but I had managed to piece most of it together through gossip. His father was the kind of brainless, domineering CEO mass-produced in melodramatic romance novels. He was fickle, mistakenly believed his unattainable first love was his soulmate, and constantly mistreated his wife from an arranged marriage, Bernard's mother. In reality, Bernard's mother had been the girl his father had never been able to forget since childhood. They had loved each other and missed their chance. In the end, his father betrayed her, and she died tragically from illness. It was understandable that Bernard refused to return. I had always known that Bernard possessed an almost stubborn sense of pride. If he did not want to talk about it, I would not bring it up either. Chapter 12. I did not live on campus. For convenience, my mother had bought me an apartment near the university. When I returned to pack my things, I unexpectedly found Kevin standing outside the door, with both hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie. He got straight to the point. "Ivy, break up with him. You're insane." I gave him a blunt reply and shoved him aside. "Huh? Why was the fingerprint lock not working?" Kevin leaned casually against the wall. "Your mom said she'd cut you off if you refused to break up with him. That includes taking back this apartment." I hurriedly checked my bank cards. Sure enough, they had all been frozen. "What did you tell my mother?" I turned around in shock. He shrugged. "I just told her the truth so you'd come to your senses. Have you never seen a man before? Why are you so determined to follow him around? You clearly used to." His voice suddenly trailed off. "Forget it. You're terminally love-blind. There's no saving you. I'm only trying to help." I wanted to beat him to death. "What gives you the right to interfere in my life? Since you've gone this far, I'll make myself perfectly clear too. You don't deserve to be my friend. From now on, stay the hell away from me. Get as far away from my happy life as you possibly can. Do you understand? We're done. Our friendship is over. You really have changed. You're mean, irrational, and honestly, I hate you. I hate your friends too." The carefree arrogance vanished from his face. He fell silent before gritting his teeth. "Is that really what you think of me?" That's the kind of person you've always been. We began arguing. Even the people passing by could no longer stand watching and came over to separate us. I looked at 19-year-old Kevin. His face still carried that infuriating arrogance, completely different from the defeated figure who would leave the country in disgrace several years later. At that thought, I gradually calmed down. I could no longer be bothered arguing with him. Whatever. Worst case scenario, I'll get a job and support myself. I snorted. I could treat it as a chance to experience life outside my privileged bubble. Kevin looked at me as though I were beyond saving. You've really lost your mind. He ground his back teeth. If I'd known this would happen, I never would have made you do that dare. I would have stopped you even if it killed me. Not long afterward, while I was on my way to see Bernard, I received a call from Lola. She said over the phone, "Ivy, can you stop playing games? You're always trying to keep Kevin on a leash, and now he won't even come out when we call him. We can't hold the dirt bike race without him. Can't you just let him go?" "I'm honestly sick of you," I replied. She froze. "You sound like such a pick-me. You hide behind the excuse that you're one of the guys while constantly doing everything you can to please men. If you like Kevin, then be brave and go after him. All right? You and Kevin are a match made in hell. Two awful people who deserve each other. You have my sincerest blessing. But could you stop bothering me now? Get lost." It was the first time she had ever heard me insult her so directly. Her breathing became ragged, and she stammered you several times without managing to form a complete sentence. I hung up. Chapter 13. Yes. I finally had a perfectly legitimate reason to live with Bernard. Standing outside the little house, I tilted my head up at him. He sighed helplessly and stepped aside. "Come in." I still had enough money in my personal savings to cover my living expenses, but Bernard refused to use any of it. Whether it was something as expensive as buying me a necklace or something as ordinary as groceries and rice, he paid for everything with the money he earned from his part-time jobs. Whenever I had no classes, Bernard went out to work during the day while I stayed home, enjoying the breeze from a little electric fan and experimenting with food. Whenever we had classes, we were always seen together on campus. Some classmates who knew me came over to ask, "Ivy, why don't you hang out with Kevin anymore? He's been in a terrible mood these past few days." I replied with a bright smile. "Because Bernard and I are together now." "What? But you come from such a good background." While my expression instantly turned serious. "Watch what you say. He's my boyfriend." I turned around and saw Bernard standing not far away. His eyes lowered. He looked quietly wounded again. We were in the same department but studied different majors. Whenever Bernard had a class, I would sit beside him and listen in, lying across the desk and doodling absent-mindedly. "Look." I proudly showed him my masterpiece. His gaze sharpened as he looked at the chubby little girl in the drawing. "Who's this?" "Michelle." "Who?" I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Our daughter." He froze and nearly shot to his feet. That evening, I rested my head on his lap while playing on my tablet. I could clearly sense how restless he was. "What's wrong?" I rolled over, making the wooden bed creak. "Ivy, you should go home." He lowered his head to look at me. His slightly cool fingertips brushed the hair from my cheek and carefully tucked every strand behind my ear. "No matter how hard I work right now, it still isn't enough. You said we'll get married and have a daughter someday. I have to give you a good life. At the very least, your quality of life shouldn't be worse than it was before." I stared at him and instinctively asked, "Oh, so you finally believe I came from the future?" He rarely smiled, but this time, he laughed softly and gave a quiet hum of agreement. "I believe you." The next day, the narrow alley was filled with men in expensive suits. Bernard was acknowledged by the Chan family much earlier than he had been in my previous life. I felt too embarrassed to return with him, but he was also unwilling to leave me alone in the rented house. So I simply ran back home. Chapter 14. You broke up with that poor boy? My mother sipped her tea with elegant composure, wearing an expression that clearly said, "Just as I expected." I knew this would happen. Pretending to wipe away tears, I stalled for time. "We broke up." She nodded in satisfaction. After I pestered and coaxed her for a while, she finally restored my access to my money. I moved back into my apartment. Kevin was remarkably well informed. He showed up at my door that very evening, drawn to the news like a shark smelling blood. standing there arrogantly. He took pleasure in my supposed misfortune. Love doesn't last long when you're broke. See? This is what happens. Thanks. But we haven't even registered our marriage yet. That's not what I meant. I rolled my eyes and was about to close the door when he hurriedly blocked it. Ivy. I've thought things through recently. Someone like Lola really isn't suitable for me. I mean, as a friend. She broke her leg the day before yesterday and called me over. But she also called 5 other guys. They were all supposedly her bros. And 2 of them were actually her boyfriends. Her private life is a little messy. I've already cut ties with her. We've known each other for so many years. Can't we make up? After everything we've been through, you can't really be that heartless. Can you? I can. Seeing how serious I was, he was left speechless. Then he cleared his throat twice and changed the subject. There's a business gathering tomorrow night. Are you going? At our age, we had already begun gradually taking over our family's businesses. I was still considering it when he added, someone from the Chan family will be attending too. It's going to be a major event. Then I definitely had to go. When he heard my answer, he raised an eyebrow and smiled, visibly relieved. Chapter 15. The following evening arrived as scheduled. I dressed to the nines for the event. The moment I stepped outside, I saw Kevin leaning against his private car and curling a finger at me. I stared at him in confusion. What are you doing? He froze. Didn't you agree to be my date? As if. I already have a boyfriend. Didn't you say you broke up with him? Ivy. Ignoring him, I hummed lightly and walked toward my family's car. I had underestimated how quickly Kevin would run to my mother and snitch. The moment I arrived at the venue, my mother's face darkened. She looked as though she wanted to twist my ear. You even dared lie to your own mother? What exactly do you see in that poor boy? Why are you so determined to give up a feast for scraps? Don't come crying to me later. She discreetly grabbed my arm and suppressed some of her anger. There are plenty of outstanding young men here. Pick one tonight. Kevin approached at just the right moment and cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm here too. Oh, Kevin, you should also look around and see whether any of the girls catch your eye. That's not what I meant. My mother sighed. But that's exactly what I mean. The 2 of you are only suited to being friends. My mother had seen all the years I spent eagerly trailing after Kevin. Kevin fell silent. The banquet officially began. Glasses clinked as everyone exchanged polite pleasantries. My mother dragged me around, scouting potential matches. I said helplessly, Mom, stop it. I'm practically a married woman. I heard Mr. Chan's son has returned. Make a good impression. Who knows? He might fall in love with you at first sight. Kevin still refused to give up and followed us purely to annoy me, wearing a mocking half-smile. Mrs. G. Someone like Ivy is too brainless. He abruptly corrected himself. Too innocent. Why would he ever be interested in her? I was just about to retort when the crowd suddenly stirred with excitement. A young man in a suit entered, surrounded by people like the center of the universe. His eyes were lowered as he spoke quietly with the older woman beside him. I recognized Bernard immediately. The woman beside him was his aunt. He said something to her, and both of them suddenly looked in my direction. My mother instinctively smiled. Years of experience in the business world sharpened her instincts, and she quickly nudged me, signaling for me to act poised and graceful. Make a good impression. Forget about that poor boy of yours. I nodded and smiled too. Kevin, however, stopped smiling. He could only watch as Bernard walked toward us and gently introduced me to the renowned businesswoman beside him. Aunt, this is my girlfriend. Chapter 16. On the way home. My mother's smile came straight from the heart. I knew my daughter had excellent taste. You somehow managed to discover the Chan family's long-lost heir before anyone else did. Mom. I refused to let even the slightest trace of materialism taint my true love. I didn't fall for him because he's a member of the Chan family. Can you stop being so snobbish? Our family is wealthy too. You know. Yes. Yes. Whatever you say. Sweetheart. My mother stared at Bernard's photo, utterly satisfied. No matter how she looked at him, she found nothing to criticize. He's tall, handsome, and apparently exceptionally intelligent. Kevin, I'm not trying to lecture you, but you really shouldn't have treated him so badly before. He'll practically be family from now on. We'll all be having meals together during holidays. Kevin looked thoroughly miserable. Through gritted teeth, he forced out a single word. Fine. Chapter 17. Bernard, Jean and I naturally began dating and eventually got engaged. Jean was his mother's surname. After returning to the Chan family, he made the same decision he had in my previous life and chose to keep the surname Jean. Bernard became young Master Jean. People stopped calling him the reclusive poor student and began describing him as an aloof, mysterious ice prince heartthrob. In public, he was impressive and untouchable. In private, however, I sat astride his waist, carefully checking my homework. I cupped his face and kissed him before shifting positions and nestling into his arms. Hubby, when did you start liking me? He gently rubbed his chin against the top of my head. From the first moment I saw you. I struggled to remember. During that dare in the private room? He laughed. Earlier than that, I was working part-time as an NPC in a haunted house. I was playing a filthy beggar. You got scared and threw yourself at me. Most people would have jumped away immediately after realizing what they'd touched. But you were different. Even though you were terrified, you still worried about me and gently wiped the dirt from my face. I thought back carefully. It had happened shortly after we started university. Someone had tripped me, and I accidentally fell on top of him. The lighting was dim, so I mistook the fake blood on his face for real blood caused by my fall. Trembling, I took out a wet wipe and cleaned his face. Later, to apologize. I even paid the haunted house $1,000 in compensation. Who would have imagined that the money came just when he desperately needed it? It was exactly enough to cover the rest of his tuition. Fate truly worked in mysterious ways. I sighed in amazement. For some reason, I suddenly began missing our old life and let out a wistful sigh. Hubby, I miss our daughter so much. Chapter 18. Mommy, up. A familiar, childish voice rang out. My whole body jolted, and I immediately sat up. My surroundings had changed again. The windows were bright and spotless. Outside, branches covered in fresh green leaves reached toward the window, carrying in a gentle breeze. Had I traveled back to the present? My daughter sucked on her finger and blinked adorably at me. Up. My heart instantly melted. I bent down and scooped the tiny bundle into my arms. A young man wearing an apron leaned into the room. Honey, you're awake. Michelle, did you wake mommy up again? It was the grown-up version of my husband. I nodded. Yeah. Was I asleep for a long time? You drank too much with your friend and slept for 13 hours. Only one night had passed. I found it unbelievable. Then my gaze suddenly landed on his right ear. Huh? He was not wearing a hearing aid. Startled, I put our daughter down and tugged open his shirt, revealing part of his lean waist. There was no scar. He instinctively caught my wrist and gently stroked it. Looking slightly embarrassed, he said, Honey, don't. Our daughter is still here. Had I changed the past? I looked up and planted a loud kiss on his lips. Hubby, I did something incredible. He listened patiently as I spoke. I traveled back in time and made sure you grew up safe and sound. He patted my head. I know. I froze. You know? Yeah. Didn't you tell me from the beginning that you came from the future? And the girl you drew looked exactly like our daughter. I froze again. Chapter 19. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. Hubby, this is so strange. Did I travel into a parallel universe? In my original timeline, I remember you being deaf in your right ear, but I could never figure out how it happened. He pulled me into his arms and held my restless limbs still. Honey, I once had a very long dream too. It was a nightmare. In that dream, we were practically strangers. You were always unhappy. Every time I saw you, you either looked miserable or were crying. He told me many things, and I listened carefully. Then he mentioned that one day, his phone had sent him a landslide warning. Remembering that I had gone to the affected area, he became worried and immediately rushed there to find me. After an enormous struggle, he managed to rescue me, but a falling rock struck him in the head and ruptured his right eardrum, leaving him deaf in that ear. The scars on his body had also come from the injuries he suffered that day. The scattered pieces of information finally connected, revealing the truth. The person who had saved me that day had been Bernard. I asked him, why didn't you ever tell me? Honey, I didn't want you to feel burdened. Even if you knew, you would only feel heartbroken and blame yourself. You did nothing wrong, and neither did I. There was nothing that needed explaining. I took a deep breath. Then I turned around, pulled out my phone, and cursed Kevin, who was overseas, and his entire bloodline. Kevin replied in confusion. Wait, when did I ever drag you to a dirt bike race? I did not care. What he had done in the previous timeline still counted. Blocked. Deleted. I turned back and nestled into Bernard's arms, breathing in his familiar scent. The moonlight was soft, and the night was silent, staring at the broad chest inches from my face. I could not resist letting my hands wander. How about we give Michelle a little sister? He leaned toward me with practiced ease, his laughter as light as a feather. All right, come here, honey.